All right. We're going to bypass the Lee cap. Um, she's a very private person, so she doesn't want, she has a lot of fans. I told her, you have a lot of fans. She has a lot of fans of the Lee. I know, the Lee cap. But anyways, I guess we don't have enough time, and she's giving a little pushback, so we'll leave it at that. So very quickly, I have a lot of slides to get to, so if I'm going too fast, just tell me to slow down. But we've got a lot of history to cram in about 45 minutes here. But anyways, if we remember, there's a massive uprising by the Jews against the Greeks and the Romans within Israel for a host of different reasons. This is being pushed by the Zealots who want the Romans out, who want an independent Israel. Who are looking for a physical Messiah to come and to fight the Romans. Now remember, during the time of Christ, this was a big thing. I believe it was a couple times that the people wanted to anoint Jesus king. They felt that he was the Messiah, and even the disciples said, "Lord, will you at this time restore the kingdom of Israel?" And so they were looking for that. But anyways, so the Zealots are going to really push this uprising, and eventually the Romans are going to send down their legions, but this is not going to work out so great in AD 66 because the Jews are going to kind of do a lot of hit and run tactics, and then eventually are going to destroy a whole legion at Beth Horon in AD 66, and this is really going to rally the people around the cause of rebellion and of independency from Rome. We talked a little bit about this, right? The different kind of weapons that were being used by the Jews, particularly against the Romans. Just imagine, thousands and thousands of these being, hurled at you. I didn't know.
Do you remember darts?
Yeah, that's what I was saying, like the lawn darts. Yeah, it's very similar. Now they're just coming at you like at 100 miles an hour. So this is one of the reasons why the Roman legions, the Thunderbolt Legion, really was decimated. We're going to see that these are going to play a part in the fall of Jerusalem as well. So, all right. The provisional government is going to be set up by the moderate Jews. And the majority of the information that we get from the Jewish wars is by Josephus. And Josephus originally is going to be a general in the Jewish army. After his loss at Yodfat, which we're going to look at, he switched sides and he became a general, really an advisor, a Jewish advisor, both to Vespasian and also to his son Titus. And we'll look at that a little bit more. So some historians kind of looking back say, was Josephus biased? Did he exaggerate things? Did he want to protect Titus? Make Titus look better than he was? I think all of these things are kind of reasonable things to ask about Josephus. But archaeology has supported a lot of what he has written down. But, I think he did exaggerate some of the deaths and stuff like that. But that's okay. All right, one last thing before we get to new material. The Jews tried to have like these battles, like face-to-face battles with the Roman legions, like on an open plain. And they tried to do this at Ashkelon, which is on the coastline of Israel. And that did not work out so well for the Jewish people. In fact, they got slaughtered. And about 8,000 of the Jewish soldiers are going to lose. So they're going to change tactics. They're like, look, we can't fight the Romans one-on-one in an open field of battle. So they decided to force the Romans to come to them. They're going to fortify towns. They're going to fortify cities. They're obviously going to fortify Jerusalem, and they're going to say to Rome, come on, try to get us, try to get through our defenses. And Rome's going to say, okay, no problem. We'll take care of it. And so you have this clash now, the Roman legions, the might of Rome, coming into Judea, and the Jews are fortifying their cities, and they're not backing down, and the Zealots have control, and it's on. So remember, this is 66 AD. This is 4 years before the actual siege begins. So again, those people that kind of had a mind towards prophecy, the first century Christians, they're going to see this, just as Jesus, predicted in Matthew 24, right? He kind of goes through all of the things. And so they were to be aware of that, and they were to flee, which the majority of them did. Okay. There are going to be two major generals in all of this. Okay, first of all, the emperor during this time was Nero. All right, and we know all the stories of Nero. Not the most balanced individual. Okay, he had his mother killed. There are stories of him burning Christians at the stake to light his, to light his gardens, that type of thing. There was the old adage that Nero fiddled while Rome burnt. That isn't really necessarily true. He actually did try to put out the fires. But anyways, people are going to get sick of Nero, as we're going to see, and it's going to cause major upheaval in the Roman world. But it's actually going to help the Jews to kind of fortify their positions. Anyways, Flavius Vespasian is going to be sent by Nero to put down this rebellion. Okay? You can't have rebellion in the Roman Empire, right? It's the Roman peace. Stop causing problems in the Roman Empire. All we want is taxes. All we want is trade. If you can deliver that, fantastic. If not, there's going to be problems. Interesting side note, Vespasian was kicked out of the Roman court, out of Nero's court, because during one of Nero's poetry readings, he loved to force people to watch him perform poetry. Vespasian fell asleep. And so that was like a major insult against Nero. So he got kicked out. And then I'm probably sure it's like, great, I'm out of here anyways. So he comes with his legions. He also sends for his son Titus, who has his own legions as well in Africa, and says, hey, I need your help, come on up. We've got to put this uprising down. So 60,000 Roman soldiers are going to land up in Syria, up in the north, right? And they're going to make their way down to bring this revolt under control. Enough is enough already, right? These Jews need to be taught a lesson. And so they're going to land at Acre, which is in northern Israel, 60,000 men. This is going to happen in April 67, right? So the next year, boom, here comes the Romans, right? Now, they had a decision to make. They could march straight down into central Israel and attack Jerusalem, the center of the uprising. But Jerusalem at this time really wasn't the issue. Jerusalem was controlled by the more moderate elements in the Jewish government. The real issue at this time was the north, was Galilee. This is where all of the zealots were fortifying their positions. And so this is where Vespasian and Titus are going to target first. Now, Josephus, who was the Jewish general right at the time, he is going to be sent up to the north to fortify these villages and towns against the Romans. But there's going to be another general as well who's a zealot. And Josephus and the zealot general are going to fight about tactics and stuff like that. So just keep this in mind, brothers and sisters. Even though you have a massive enemy and a massive army marching down on Israel, the Jewish defenders are not on the same page. In fact, they're fighting each other. And we're going to see that this fighting is going to become a real problem. And it's going to be brutal. In fact, the Jews are going to be more brutal to other Jews from different factions in a lot of cases than they were against the Romans. You could make that argument, I guess. But anyways, so there's this fight about other things. At the end of the day, Rome's going to come into the Galilee and they're going to just subdue this area. Okay, about 100,000 Jews are either going to be killed or enslaved during this time. They're going to really show no mercy in true Roman fashion. Once they come into the area, once they're at war with you, there's no mercy, no quarter given. And again, look at it this way. The legions have to be fed, but there's got to be a financial reason in a lot of cases to bring these legions. How are we going to pay the legions? Well, Rome had plenty of money, but there's a lot of loot to be taken from this area as well, and a lot of people That was the big thing, was slaves. The selling of slaves from captured areas was a big moneymaker. So just think about this, you have 30 or 40,000 people that you're selling. Just think about the money you can make off of selling people into slavery. And that's what the Romans did. They made a ton of money doing this. We're going to look very quickly at the siege of Yotfat just to kind of give us a prelude to what is going to happen at Jerusalem. All right. After all of this, well, we'll get into that. Did I hit that?
What's the stone?
The stone is a memorial of these of the people that died here at the Battle of Yotfat, and at Galmer as well. Up in some of the there were caves up in this area as well, and there was kind of like a Masada, a mini Masada that's going to happen here, where the Jews are going to fight, or they ended up killing themselves as well. I think, Brother Jason, you've been here, correct? Yeah, I've been all over Israel. Multiple times, buddy. Don't worry about it. Phil, is that changing on the screen? Is that changing up there? No. Okay. All right, so while Phil's kind of getting that straightened out, so the siege at Yotfat, when it pops up, but this is going to be the last major city or town that is going to resist against the Romans. The siege itself is going to last 47 days. Okay, so not that long. The problem was they didn't have enough water. They're going to run out of water, which is essential, right? And the Romans are just going to encircle the city. The story goes that they sent 1,000 cavalry in first and just blocked off the city. So you can just kind of imagine the psychological terror involved in this. You're in a fortified town, and all of a sudden you see 1,000 horsemen, Roman horsemen, show up and surround your city. And then the next day, the rest of the army comes. It's scary, right? And I think we get a little sense of this from Isaiah, I think, the 35th chapter, when the Assyrians came and surrounded Jerusalem at that time too, and just the fear that was going on during this time. Tremendous amount of fear. And so the Romans are going to do what the Romans are going to do. They're going to surround it. They're going to pitch they're going to build their camps all around, and they're just going to squeeze the city. Say, hey, we're going to wait until you die. Now, every day they would go and they would have sorties against the city. The first thing that they did was to build a ramp going up to get at the city, so they could march up and then take their battering rams and ram the walls. Another thing that they did was to build massive siege towers on wheels. I think we've all seen these, right? And they would push them up against the walls. And there'd be Romans up at the top, with arrows and slings and stuff like that, just firing. They're taller now than the walls, right? And they're firing down at the people. And so eventually, Yotfat is going to surrender, right? And that's that. Good question, Jim. The significance is this. Number one, it's the last holdout in Galilee, okay? It's the last city to fall. Galilee is now subdued after the fall of Yotfat. But the very same tactics that the Romans are going to use against the Jews here at Yotfat, they're going to use in Jerusalem as well. Siege towers, building of ramps, battering rams, these engines of war, these ballistas, firing catapults. All these big ballistas, like giant crossbows, right? And they're just firing stuff left and right. Okay? Oh, beautiful. Thank you, Phil. Awesome. So up here would be, you have a picture right here, and here you go. Inside, it's working? Uh-oh. So this right here, okay, would be the walls. Where am I? Where is my... You can see the walls right here, and then the ramp going up here. You have all of the soldiers moving up in here, and then underneath that kind of structure, that would be the battering ram, and they're covered, and they're just boom, boom, just wheeling on that wall. Now we're going to find out that certain walls in Jerusalem are going to be too tough for battering rams, particularly the wall around the Temple Mount, and so they're going to have to do other things. Okay. So this is when Josephus is going to switch sides as well. He's going to become, part of the Roman, going to be an advisor to the Romans. Questions, comments on this? Just that, I think, yeah. So Jim asked the question: is there any significance to Vespasian being injured during this time? And I guess the only significance, Jim, would be it shows the brutality of this war, and it shows that the Jews aren't giving up, and they're going to fight to the death. In fact, the majority of the people are going to fight to the death here. There's a story, actually, Josephus and the other leaders are going to, instead of committing suicide because it was against the law of Moses to do that, the guy next to you would kill you, until there was only two people left. And lo and behold, Josephus is one of the two guys. And some people say that Josephus, kind of manipulated the counting of it in order to survive. But whether or not that's true or not, I don't know, but it's an interesting story. Okay. We'll get into that later on. Okay, changes sides. He's going to take the family name of Vespasian and Titus, and that's why his name is Josephus Flavius, or Flavius Josephus. He's going to be given Roman citizenship. He's going to be, he's going to be very close to these two emperors. He's going to be given a pension, a nice little villa in Rome, and he's also going to be the storyteller or the historian of the Jewish people during this time. And people would pay to go and hear Josephus tell the history of the Jewish people from creation to, modern times during that time, which is pretty interesting. Like, he was the Jewish storyteller. So think about that. That's really was a form of entertainment, but he's also kind of keeping alive the stories from the Bible as well, in combination with the stories from the Jewish-Roman wars. All right. Okay, now it's moving. All right, here we go, people. All right, this is a quote right here from Josephus, right from his writings, The War of the Jews. Now, this is what, again, just keep in mind that this is going to be, kind of similar behavior from the Romans once they take one of these villages or cities. And as for the Romans, they were so well remembered what they had suffered during the siege that they spared none nor pitied any, but drove the people down the prefaces from the citadel and slew them as they drove them down, at which time the difficulties of the place hindered those that were still able to fight from defending themselves, for they were distressed in the narrow streets and could not keep their feet sure along the prefaces. They were overpowered with the crowd of those that came fighting with and down from the citadel. So you have this mass of people. The Romans are coming, they're pushing in. So it's a slaughterhouse, pretty much. And just, again, keep that in mind. All right. So Galilee is subdued. As we've said, 100,000 are going to be either killed or brought into slavery. Now, this is pretty interesting. Some of the surviving zealots are going to leave, are going to flee from Galilee, and they're going to go to Joppa. Right? Joppa is significant in the Bible because, say it loud. Yeah, you were right. Did you say Jonah? Yeah, Jonah, right? Jonah is actually going to flee from Joppa, right? And so Joppa historically has been a seaside town and a source of trade. And so this is interesting. They're going to rebuild the city, but they're also going to build like an army. Not an army, a navy. And they're going to use this navy to harass the shipping, the wheat shipping that's coming from Egypt. Egypt is going to be the breadbasket of the Roman world. This is where they got the majority of their wheat, to feed the Roman people. Remember, they got free bread with, a free loaf of bread every day. It was kind of like a welfare system, that type of thing. So these Jewish pirates are going out and they're sinking these merchant ships, or they're taking all the stuff on the ships. And so this was just another way for the Jewish rebellion to kind of harass the Romans, which I thought was interesting. But the majority of the zealots are going to come down from Galilee, and they're going to go into Jerusalem. This is going to cause a major problem, because now you have the moderates, the high priest and the priest class, the nobility, the wealthy families in Jerusalem. They wanted to kind of come to some kind of agreement with the Romans, like, hey, maybe we can, come up to, we can stop this fighting. It's awful. Once the zealots came down into Jerusalem, the zealots are going to take over the place. And there's going to be massive infighting within Jerusalem. Each one of these zealots, factions are going to have their own generals, that type of thing. And so there's going to be fighting, like a civil war is going to rage within Jerusalem during this time. And so it's crazy to me that while the Romans are kind of all around Jerusalem, they're wiping out cities, they're setting fire to villages, they're taking people captive, right? They're selling them into slavery. Well, what are they doing in Jerusalem? Are they readying themselves for the impending battle? No. They're fighting each other. They're literally killing each other in the streets of Jerusalem. The zealots are killing the moderates. All right? The Sicarii, remember the assassins? They're going to kill anybody that even whispers making any deals with Rome. Right? And so the die kind of is cast right now. You have the more radical elements within Jewish society now have really taken over the city, number one, but they've also kind of taken over the direction of the army and how they're going to proceed. This is interesting as well. There is going to be a rumor that the Jewish Sanhedrin is making a deal with Rome. And this is going to kind of freak out some of the Edomites that are down south. Remember, Herod was half Edomite. So there is that connection between the Jews and Edom, right? Even going back to ancient times, Esau and Jacob. Anyways, they are going to send 20,000 men to help protect Jerusalem. All right, and we'll look at that a little bit more. It's just think about it. Jerusalem isn't that big of a city. You have more and more people being crammed into this city, both civilians and soldiers, different factions fighting each other. It's an absolute mess in there, all right? This is 68 AD. Again, we're about 2 years out from the actual fall. All right, now, the people are going to get pretty tired of the zealots in there and what they're doing. Okay, they're going to take over the temple. The zealots are going to come in. They're going to take over the temple. They're actually going to live in the outer court of the temple. This is where they're going to be quartered. But they're going to be taking the money as well and all of the taxes, and they're going to be using it for their own gain. And the people are going to get tired of this, right? It's kind of like who was it? Hophni and Phinehas, right? With Eli, they were taking the best for themselves. I think this kind of falls in the same category. The people are like, hey, what's going on? These guys come in here, now they're taking over the temple, they're killing everybody that disagrees with them. And so there's going to be a revolt against the zealots. And in fact, there's going to be a pretty sizable battle on top of the Temple Mount for control of the Temple Mount. And so this is what, I mentioned in the last slide about the Idumeans, the Edomites. They're on the side of the zealots, by the way. And so the zealots kind of sneak out this letter saying, help, Jerusalem is about to fall into the hands of the Romans because the Sanhedrin is making a deal. You got to help us. And so the Idumean leadership send 20,000 soldiers there. The city is walled off. They close the gates. But during a thunderstorm, the zealots kind of sneak off the Temple Mount, and then during the thunderstorm, cut the iron bars from the gates. And so the gates now are kind of flung open. All these Edomite soldiers come into Jerusalem. They kill all of the moderates, right? All the moderate soldiers. And now the zealots are in complete control. But they also don't stop at just killing the moderates. They go and they start killing people, Jews within Jerusalem. And then they find out that, oh, that really wasn't happening. Like the Sanhedrin wasn't making a deal with the Romans. And they said, oh, sorry, guys. And then they just left. So that's legitimately what happened. So 10,000 Jews are going to be killed during this time within Jerusalem. All right? So just think about the absurdity of this situation, brothers and sisters. You have 60 to 70,000 Roman soldiers, plus their allies, like they were Arab allies and different tribes that didn't particularly care for the Jews at this time. They're going to ally themselves with Rome. And so, you're talking about 70-plus thousand people, soldiers, around the city and within the city. You're not making proper, protections or proper preparations for this onslaught that is coming. You're just fighting each other. And so this is really going to be one of the major reasons that, Jerusalem is going to fall. Just bad leadership, bad preparation. They spent all their time fighting each other, which is wild to me. Okay? Questions, comments? All right, picture right here of the temple, right? I think this is like a scale model right here. Where you can, that's in the city, right, Jason? You can go see this?
Yeah, they have it in a museum.
Okay.
Outside the city.
Dig it. Thank you. All right. This is some background information very quickly. People are going to get tired of Nero in 69 AD. He loved to act, like to go on stage and act. Now to us, we're like, yeah, okay, big deal. A lot of people like to act. But during this time, actors in the Roman world were looked down upon as like the lowest of the low, And so to have an emperor standing up there and performing or acting, it was just so against the culture of Rome, particularly the nobility. And among other things, he had, his behavior changed, that type of thing. He wasn't great. Wasn't a great emperor. And so the Praetorian Guard, who is the kind of the bodyguard of the emperor, along with the Senate and some other noble families, all conspire against Nero, and they brand him. The Senate brands him an enemy of the people, and so he flees. He's about to be captured, and so he ends up having one of his servants kill him. And so, boom, Nero's gone, gonzo. But now we have this power vacuum. So 69 AD in Rome is called the year of the 4 emperors. There's going to be 4 emperors during this time, not even counting Nero. Okay? The first guy you have, just very quickly, Galba. Galba he was the governor of Spain. He's going to be named emperor. This other guy named Otho is going to say, no, I want to be emperor. He's going to kill Galba. And then you're going to have this other guy called Vitellius. He's going to take over things. He's going to kick out Otho. And this is when Vespasian comes in. Vespasian really didn't want anything to do with the politics of Rome. He had lived a lot of time outside of Rome. But his legion said, hey, if all these people are going to be, say they're going to be emperors, why not you? Why can't you be emperor? And Vespasian said, yeah, why can't I be emperor? So he's gonna leave Israel at this time, and he's gonna leave the fighting or the finishing up, the capture of Jerusalem to his son Titus. Vespasian eventually is going to have a massive battle within Rome. It's going to be a brutal battle within Rome, and he is going to be victorious, and he is going to be crowned emperor. Okay, Vespasian. All right. So, this is going to be a major turning point in the fall of Jerusalem. Why? Well, it's a tactical thing. The first thing is Vespasian never wanted to attack Jerusalem directly. He felt that too many of his men would die, that they could kind of harass the countryside and force more and more people into Jerusalem for protection, and just really starve out the city. And also he knew of the internal fighting that was going on in Jerusalem at this time. So we just said, okay, just let them tear each other, let them tear each other apart. No big deal. And so that was his strategy. Titus disagreed. He says, I'm going straight for Jerusalem. If Jerusalem falls, this whole thing ends. And he was right. So they're going to destroy the countryside, that type of thing. More and more people are going to flee to Jerusalem for safety. Now, here's an interesting thing as well. This is wild to me. During this time, Jewish pilgrims are still coming to Jerusalem for Passover. So, different Jews from all over the Roman world, the diaspora, are going to come to Jerusalem for the Passover, which is crazy. You have a massive army outside the walls of Jerusalem, but you're still going to go up to Jerusalem to keep the Passover. And so Titus is going to allow this. Sure, guys, go head up. Go, yeah, definitely. Hey, we're open for business, right? And, you're going to have, almost 1 million, between 500 and 1 million Jewish people within Jerusalem at this time. And they're going to keep on coming. And so I think it was just, it's one of these mentalities, brothers and sisters, where I believe that they felt that God was going to protect them, number one. That was the first thing, like, okay, Rome's here, no big deal. But number two, I have an obligation. I have an obligation to go to Jerusalem, to the temple, to the Passover, right? And so this dedication to the ritualization, the rituals of the law, is actually going to get a lot of these Jewish people killed or enslaved during this time. It's going to be brutal, as we're going to see. This is going to put, obviously, an incredible burden on the infrastructure in Jerusalem, right? Water issues, food issues, sanitation issues, disease issues. It's also going to put a tremendous burden on the political infrastructure as well. That's already messed up because the zealots are fighting, the Sanhedrin and so on and so forth. So you're adding into this mix more and more people crammed into a very small area. Not great, guys. Okay? Again, during this time, the zealots are going to continue to be fighting each other. They're also going to be fighting other factions as well. All right? Okay. So the first thing that Titus does is he commands his legions to build a massive trench around Jerusalem. Okay? This is going, obviously, to prevent any Jews of trying to escape. You have a massive trench. Now, along this trench as well, he's going to build a massive wall, a wooden wall. He's going to cut down all of the trees around Jerusalem and build, I think it was like a 4-mile wall, a wooden wall with little forts and everything all around Jerusalem. So Jerusalem is completely surrounded and cut off from the rest of the world. Okay? They are completely under siege right now. 1 million people crammed into this very small area in Jerusalem. All right? So whenever, people start to die of starvation, obviously, right? You can't feed that many people. As is here in the notes in this slide, the zealots, in order to kind of make the people more desperate and almost force them to fight to the death, they're going to destroy a massive amount of food supplies. Josephus says that Jerusalem, the government had a 10-year supply of food to stave off this, the Roman siege. 10 years. Now, was he exaggerating? Probably. But anyways, the zealots are going to destroy a massive amount of food that could feed the people in order to make them desperate to fight the Romans. Again, crazy behavior, right? You have an extremist group of people taking over the welfare of Jerusalem. It's bad. And so this is going to cause, obviously, mass starvation, mass hardship in Jerusalem. And so even the soldiers aren't getting enough food. So just think about it. You're not eating, for a week or so. are eating very small amounts of calories, less than 1,000 calories a day, maybe 500 calories a day, and you've got to fight the Romans off every single day. How effective are you going to be if you're not getting the proper nutrition? And then you're putting a massive amount of mental and physical stress on your body. It's not great, guys, right? And so this is really the atmosphere within Jerusalem. Anybody that would try to escape and was captured, the Jews, they would be crucified by the Romans outside of Jerusalem. And so Josephus says about 500 people are going to be crucified. And just to amuse themselves, the Roman soldiers are going to crucify, the different types of Jews in different positions, right? Put their arms up, different positions, hang them upside down, all of these different things. Hilarious, right? Again, it just shows you the mentality and the brutality of the Romans when they put their mind to war, all right? Extremely brutal people. This is interesting as well. There were Arab mercenaries around here, and so, some Jews did manage to make it out of this kind of cauldron of death and away from the trench, and they snuck through the massive wooden wall that the Romans had built. But there were also, kind of Arab soldiers around there as well. And they would not only kill the Jews, but they would also cut open their stomachs because they heard rumors, and this is probably true, by the way, that some of the Jewish refugees were swallowing their gold and their valuables into the stomachs. And so the Arabs, the Arab mercenaries found this out, and they were cutting them open, looking for gold coins, looking for valuables within the stomachs of these people. Again, just to kind of show what environment we're dealing with here. Okay? The infighting continues. In fact, the zealots are going to be fighting each other. In fact, one of the zealot leaders, he sees the Romans outside. They're building siege weapons, massive towers right outside, and he could have sallied out of the walls and attacked them to prevent them from building the siege towers. But he was afraid that if he took his men outside the city walls, that the other zealot leader would lock the doors and wouldn't let him back in. And so this legitimately happened. So, listen, if you have this level of distrust and this level of paranoia, I'm sorry, you cannot have a cohesive, battle strategy against the Romans, against the might of Rome, the superpower of its day. This is not going to be an easy battle, despite everything that's going on inside of Jerusalem. The Jews are going to fight fiercely. They're going to be brutal to the Romans as well, okay? I don't want you to think that the Romans were the only brutal people. The Jews were brutal to the Romans if they got them. We're trying to slaughter all of the Romans. Lit them on fire. They were digging trenches and stuff like that to soften up the ground, as we're going to see. It was brutal. Let's see, continues. So they're going to build these massive siege towers that they're going to use. They're going to build a ramp as well to try to get up onto the through the walls. They're going to use battering rams, all this kind of stuff. Okay? Questions, comments? Massive starvation in Jerusalem. All right? Thousands are going to die. Josephus tells us of a story of a mother eating one of her children, okay, eating half of her child and saving the rest for later, okay. There are going to be bodies everywhere, okay. You can't get out of the city. There's not enough food. There is water, thankfully, but there's not enough food, okay. Infighting, people killing each other within the city, all right. A nightmare situation. Right up here, if you can see, here are some of the different weapons that they're going to be use. Giant siege towers, catapults, different ballistas that they're going to use, like giant crossbows that you crank up, right? And then you put the like, it's almost like a dart like this with a massive iron tip on it, and they're going to let that puppy go, and it's bad news. So the Romans are going to attack the city in a couple different spots. I have a couple maps that you can take a look at in a little bit. There's going to be brutal fighting. We talked about the different stuff that they're going to use. Jewish defenders are going to dig underground to kind of soften up the ground. They see these siege towers coming up, and they're like, we're gonna dig underground to soften up the ground a bit. So what they did was they would dig a tunnel and then kind of like a big pit, and they would hold the pit up with wood, but they would also fill it with bitumen, right, which was highly flammable. And so they would dig this pit, and then they would light the whole tunnel in the underground pit on fire, which would burn the posts, the wooden posts that were holding up the ground. And so as the siege tower is coming, this thing's burning underground, and then whoop, it falls right down. And so hundreds of Roman soldiers are going to die when this siege tower comes crashing down. They're going to burn to death as well. And the Jews are like, yeah, we got it. And the Romans are like, tired of this, right? And so there's no quarter that is going to be given by the Romans or by the Jews. A fight to the death, literally. All right? The Romans eventually are going to capture the Antonia fortress, which is the Roman fortress that had been taken over by the Jews that overlooks the Temple Mount. Okay, they're going to take this, and this is kind of going to be the beginning of the end, as we're going to see. But here's another little interesting thing: the Jews are going to capture some of these, some of these siege engines, these weapons of war, and they're going to use them against the Romans. So the Romans are going to come walking up, and all of a sudden, you got some guy there with a giant catapult, firing off darts at them. So the Romans are going to lose a lot of men here. And it's, again, brutal fighting. And so the Romans are going to be more and more agitated by this, right? At what is happening to their legions, okay? In fact, they're going to lose a few of their standards. Remember the importance of the standards from our last class? If you lost that standard, that was the worst. The Jews are going to take a bunch of their standards as well as they try to take the Temple Mount. So again, ferocious fighting. All right. Eventually, Titus is going to be, look, we've been trying all this different stuff. We've just got to storm the temple. We've got to send all our legions and storm the temple. The Jews continued to fight ferociously against the Romans. They rebuild the walls. Roman losses are beginning to mount. And so the Jews really were going to fight to the death. They were either going to beat the Romans so badly that they're going to leave, or the Romans are going to beat them. Despite their bravery, despite their courage, the Jews couldn't stop the overwhelming might of the legions. Eventually, they're going to break through the walls. The Romans broke through the first couple walls of Jerusalem like in a month. But it was that third wall, right, that is part of the Temple Mount, that connects to the Temple Mount. It's going to be tough. They're not going to be able to break through because those walls built by Herod the Great, they broke battering rams. Like they couldn't, even the Romans got in there and tried to pry some of those massive stones out, and they got a couple of them out, but it didn't do anything to the structure of the walls. They still remained up, right? And so, major problem. They're eventually going to take the outer court of the temple. There's going to be massive fighting within the outer court. The zealots are going to be kind of crammed in. They're going to be forced into the inner court. They have one more chance to kind of get the Romans out of the outer court. And they go and they crash right into the Roman legions in the outer court, but they're eventually beaten back. And then we don't know who, but a Roman soldier takes a torch and he heaves it into the temple area, okay, into the inner court and where the temple is. And boom, the temple now is caught on fire. And so the Jews now, they look to the defenders, the one thing, the symbol of their independence, the symbol of God being with them, the symbol of holy Jerusalem, of the law and the prophets, is on fire. And this is going to completely demoralize the Jewish fighters on the Temple Mount. And they're going to be wiped out. And Boom, now the temple is on fire. Now, Josephus tries to, say that Titus didn't want the temple to be burnt, this, that, and the other thing. Who knows? A lot of historians say that Josephus was kind of make Titus look a little bit better, because of this. You could call it a war crime, like destroying a holy site, that type of thing. But anyways, the temple now was burnt with fire. It is looted as well. The Roman soldiers go in there. They take the golden candlestick. They take the table of showbread. They're taking everything. They go into the treasury, take millions and millions of gold and other precious things out of the temple. All right? Temple burns. Jerusalem burns. The Romans come in and they start just slaughtering everybody in Jerusalem. Okay? Some of the Jews are going to survive by hiding in the tunnels and the sewers of the city. A lot of them are eventually going to be captured, but some of them are going to make it out of Jerusalem, and some of them are going to end up in Masada, right? Herod's old summer palace, where the Jews, the Zealots, are going to make their final last stand, and that's really a story for another time. Okay, I want to just very quickly kind of go through these two. Here's first century Jerusalem. The Romans, the Romans are going to come, see that outer wall up here? My mouse isn't working great. But anyways, that outer wall, they're going to crash through there, right here. Here's the Antonia Gate right here, okay? They're going to crash through that second wall as well. But in order to get to the temple and kind of get to the city, they need to take Antonia's Gate. And this is where, this area right here, this is where the majority of the fighting is going to take place, the most brutal fighting. And then, right here kind of gives us an account. The red is where the Romans were. You can tell, they break through the outer wall right here, break through the second wall, and then they have to get through the Antonia Gate. They get into the temple. After the temple is set on fire, they sweep down into the lower city. Herod's palace is going to be one of the last places that they clear. And then, boom, the city falls. That's it. Tens of thousands of people are going to be enslaved or killed. It's, awful time. Okay? Here's a picture right here of the Antonia Gate. You can see how massive it is. Yes, Jason? Yes.
And they buried it in a tunnel. And they still know where it is today.
But they're not telling.
And they're not able to get to it because they don't have control of the Temple Mount.
Okay, so Brother Jason said that according to the oral history of the Jewish people, that during this time, right before the temple was going to fall, they took the Ark of the Covenant and they buried it in a cave. And that the Jews know where the cave is now, and they know where the Ark of the Covenant is, but they don't have control of the Temple Mount. And so maybe eventually, if that's true, we'll find it. Okay? All right, Jimbo, I'm going fast here. All right, last thing. The siege is going to last 7 months. Temple is burnt with fire. All the holy things are taken out, as we said. Masada in 73 AD is going to be really the final resistance of the first Jewish-Roman war. But afterward, the Jews aren't kicked out of Jerusalem. They're not kicked out of Judea either. They're actually allowed to stay, and they do okay. They do okay until the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 AD. Okay, so like 60 years later, there's going to be another revolt by the Jews, and they're like, okay, that's it. And they pretty much just wipe out all of the Jews there. They build a temple on the Temple Mount to Jupiter, I believe, and the Jews are not allowed to go into Jerusalem at all. Now, all of these people are going to, they're going to be placed in mines, digging canals, and other awful jobs. Everyone that survived this. They're also going to be forced to build the Colosseum, the great Colosseum, right? Physically, they're going to work in building this Colosseum, but the money that Titus got from Jerusalem is going to pay to have this Colosseum built. So anytime you go by the Colosseum and you see pictures of it, Jewish money built that. Jewish backs built that. Fact. Okay? You can go see the Arch of Titus today. This is Masada right here. You can see the big ramp that they built. The Romans built another ramp. They love building ramps. Okay, but that's a story for another time. Here's the Arch of Titus in Rome right here. It was built by his brother to commemorate the great victory over the Jews. And you can see right here as part of the relief, here are the Roman soldiers taking all of the things from the temple, right? You can see the menorah right here, the table stick, and also the table of showbread as well. And so, the Jews now, Jerusalem falls, and the Temple Mount is empty of any Jewish presence. Okay, and it's really going to be the beginning of the Jewish diaspora, right? They're not allowed to come to Jerusalem.